Hello, I'm Alex Summersby. In this video tutorial, I'll show you how I create a classic mono portrait conversion using non-destructive techniques. I've got a lovely portrait image here of my young portrait subject, but there's a distracting flash of red in the background and a bit of unevenness in the skin colours. So we're going to try and convert this shot to mono to try to emphasize the form rather than the distracting colour. You've got several options for converting to mono in Photoshop and Elements. I'm using Elements 8 on the Mac here, but it's actually the same in Elements 6, 7 and 8 on the PC. The first option is to go to the Enhance menu, Adjust Colour, Remove Colour. If you're using Photoshop, it's Image, Adjustments, Desaturate, but the keystroke shortcut is actually the same. Control-Shift-U on the PC, Command-Shift-U on a Mac. I select the command, and the colour information is simply discarded. In this case, it's given me a pretty flat conversion, and that's the big problem with the Desaturate or Remove Colour command. I don't really have any control over the conversion. If I want to produce a different conversion, I need to prepare the image first by correcting the tones, perhaps boosting the contrast with levels or curves, and then carry out my conversion, see what result it has. I want something a little bit more interactive, so I'm going to undo this and try another option. Again in the Enhance menu, I'll select Convert to Black and White. If you're using Photoshop, you'd go to the Image menu again, Adjustments, Black and White. The options are a little bit different, but the principles are exactly the same. If I select this option, in Elements I get a separate dialog. In the top left here, I've got my RGB colour image. In the top right, I have a preview of my mono conversion. I can select from a range of preset styles here at the bottom left. Each of these gives me a different mix of the information from the red, green and blue colour channels of the original image. So if I select Vivid Landscapes, for instance, you can see the sliders representing the different channels move to show me what mix is being used in that conversion. I'll start with the Portraits preset. And the beauty of Convert to Black and White is that I can then manually adjust the mix of colour information. Because there's a lot of red in skin tones, quite small changes in the red slider will have a big impact on my mono conversion. As you can see, I can go from very dark skin tones to quite bright ones. I think that conversion's not bad, but you'll see that that effect has also blown out the background of my image quite badly. That's one of the problems with Convert to Black and White. It applies across the whole image, and it's not really very easy to control what happens to different parts of the image. At best, I could try to strike a balance between what I want in the skin tones and having an acceptable amount of detail in the background. The other problem is that I can't zoom in or out of this preview, so I can't really check very closely what effect it's having on different parts of my image. I think I want something a little bit more controllable, so I'm going to cancel this and show you another way completely. I'm going to start by applying a solid colour adjustment layer. So I'll select that option from the adjustment layers pop-up. I don't want to apply this colour, I'm going to apply a mid-tone grey. So using the HSB value fields, I'll select 0 for the hue, 0 for the saturation, and 50% for the brightness, which gives me a mid-tone grey. Of course, I don't want to see just a mid-tone grey, so I'll change the blending mode of this layer to hue. That has the effect of simply disguising the colour information in my colour image. But you'll see that I haven't actually discarded the colour information. If I toggle this adjustment layer on and off, you'll see that the color image is still there. That's the first advantage of this method. It's non-destructive. I can undo it or discard that at any time and still be left with my original image unchanged. But now I want to fine-tune this conversion. This has actually left the skin tones looking just as flat as that initial conversion with convert to black and white. So I'm going to now apply a brightness contrast adjustment layer. What I want to do is increase the contrast a little, so I'll bump up the contrast, I think, quite a lot. That's the sort of thing I want, but it's also had the effect of muddying my skin tones a little bit, so I'll bump up the brightness as well. That looks about right. You'll notice, of course, that this has now blown out that background again. Now, one of the beauties of this method is that when I add an adjustment layer, a mask is automatically created along with it. So if I want to mask the effect from a particular part of the image, I can do it by painting on the mask. I click the mask to make sure that it's targeted, and I then take my brush tool, make sure that the foreground color is set to black rather than white, so I'll hit X here to swap the colors over, make the brush an appropriate size, and I'll then simply paint on my image to mask the effect where I don't want it to apply. And you'll see that, as I mentioned, the beauty of this method is that it's completely interactive. I can see the effect that my changes are having as I paint them on the image. There, we've disguised that effect around the sides of the image there. What about mixing the color channel information? In this method, what I do is apply a hue saturation adjustment. Now, in the hue saturation dialog, I can not only make global hue saturation changes to the composite color image, I can also select different color channels from the dialog's edit menu. I'm going to select reds here, and I'm going to change the lightness or the brightness of the reds in the color image. Now, in the same way as I was lightening and darkening or adding and subtracting red information in my conversion in Convert to Black and White, I can use the lightness slider to increase the amount of red in my conversion or decrease it. You can see the effect on the skin tones quite markedly. So I think I want to lighten the skin tones. That's probably something like the effect I want. And then I'm also going to select blues so that I can change other parts of the image where blues are more prominent. Now, if you watch the effect on our subject's left eye as I move the lightness slider, you'll see the eyes become markedly darker and now quite a bit brighter. Still not quite the effect I want, though. So let me zoom in on my image, and yes, that's another advantage of this. I can zoom in and scroll around my image and see exactly what effect I'm having on particular parts of the shot. What I'm going to do, I think, is apply a levels adjustment layer and brighten the shot from the midtones just to bring out the detail in those eyes a little bit. I'm not going to worry about the effect on the rest of the image for a moment, and I'll show you why in a second. I think the eyes are about where I want them now. What I'm now going to do is target the mask thumbnail of this levels layer that I've just applied, and then hit Control-I or Command-I on a Mac to invert that mask so it conceals the effect. I'm then going to take a white brush, so I'll press X again to swap my brush colors, make the brush an appropriate color, and paint in that adjustment just where I want it on the image. You could, of course, zoom in and do this even more precisely. I think that's about the effect I want, or something close to it. And there's my finished mono conversion, done completely non-destructively using adjustment layers. I could revisit any of these adjustments. In earlier versions of Photoshop or Elements, you would double-click on the adjustment thumbnail to open up the dialog again, and I can tweak any of these at any time, because the basic color information, the image information, is never harmed at any stage in the process. And there's my finished mono conversion.